A $9,000 Chevy engine repair, a $40 part that prevents it. The math is not complicated, but General Motors has been shipping trucks with this same broken system since 2007, and your dealer makes too much money from the failure to ever warn you about the fix. Let me start with what is actually happening inside your engine, because a lot of Chevy owners I talk to have no idea their V8 is running a system that was broken by the factory. Every Chevy V8 built since 2007 runs a system called active fuel management. The newer trucks call it dynamic fuel management. Fancy names for the same broken idea. The concept sounds reasonable on paper. At highway cruise, the engine computer tells 4 of your 8 cylinders to shut off. You coast along on a V4 to save fuel. GM gets a better mileage sticker on the window, the EPA is happy, everybody wins. But to make this work, GM installed 8 collapsible hydraulic lifters inside the engine, 4 per bank. Each one has a tiny locking pin inside it. That pin has to retract at exactly the right moment, the instant the cam lobe is sitting on its flat spot. Oil pressure is what fires the pin. Here is where the engineering falls apart. That locking pin releases at about 22 pounds per square inch of oil pressure. Your engine at hot idle puts out between 25 and 30 pounds per square inch on a good day. That is a 3 pound per square inch window. 3 measly pounds of pressure separate normal operation from a catastrophic valvetrain failure. And General Motors put this system in a truck platform that is expected to tow heavy trailers, idle in 95-degree Arizona heat, and survive 150,000 miles of Minnesota salt and cold starts. I personally think that margin of error is reckless, and I have seen the consequences of it more times than I want to count. The failure chain is almost comically predictable. Your VLOM, the valve lifter oil manifold, sits on top of the engine and controls oil flow to those AFM lifters through a set of solenoids. Over the years, sludge builds up inside the oil passages. Cold starts whip the oil into foam before it reaches operating temperature. Oil pressure dips 2 or 3 pounds below where it needs to be. That is all it takes. The wrong oil signal at the wrong millisecond makes a lifter collapse while the cam is still pressing on it. The pushrod bends. The cam lobe gets shaved flat like somebody took a grinder to it. Metal shavings start circulating through the oil. The first warning sign is usually a tick on cold start. But by the time you hear that tick, your engine is already damaged. Let me tell you about a truck I worked on, because this is the case I think about every time somebody brings up AFM. A guy I have known for years brings in his 2017 Silverado with the 5.3-liter V8, 82,000 miles on the odometer. This is not a neglected truck. He runs full synthetic oil, changes it every 5,000 miles, and keeps every receipt in a folder. But I could hear the tick from across the parking lot before he even turned the key off. I pulled the valve cover on the passenger side, and it was cylinder 1. The lifter had collapsed. The pushrod was bent in a perfect arc. The cam lobe looked like it had been dragged across asphalt. I quoted him $3,800 for lifters, a new camshaft, gaskets, oil, and labor. He paid it because he had no choice. Then I asked him the question I ask every AFM failure customer: did you ever disable the system? He looked at me like I was speaking a different language. 5 years of dealer oil changes stamped in his service book. Not one service writer had ever mentioned the word disabler to him, not once. A $40 device plugged into the OBD2 port under his dashboard would have told his engine computer to never send the AFM activation command. The solenoids never fire, the lifters never collapse. The failure sequence I just described cannot even begin because step 1 never happens. $3,800 of preventable damage because nobody at the dealership said 12 words to him. And I am not going to pretend this is an accident because the math tells a different story. A dealer service department bills from $3,500 to $9,000 per lifter and cam replacement depending on the engine and the region. They move dozens of these repairs every single month per store across the entire country. You do that multiplication and you start to understand why your service advisor has never handed you a $40 plug on delivery day. There is no business case for eliminating a $6,000 repeat visit that walks back through the door from 12 to 18 months like clockwork. I am not calling it a conspiracy. I am just saying the incentives line up in one direction, and it is not the direction that protects you. I actually had a customer a few months back who told me his dealer service writer recommended a $200 cabin air filter change, but never once brought up AFM. $200 for a filter you can swap yourself in 45 seconds with a YouTube video. But the $40 part that prevents a $9,000 engine job? Crickets. If that does not tell you everything you need to know about the dealer service model, I do not know what will. And here is something else I want you to think about. The Chevy forums are absolutely full of guys who did everything right. Full synthetic Mobil 1 oil, changed every 5,000 miles, dealer serviced their whole ownership, and their lifters still failed because oil quality has almost nothing to do with this problem. The issue is the system design itself. Clean oil does not fix a 3 psi tolerance window. It does not fix solenoids that degrade over time. You can pour the most expensive oil on the planet into your Silverado, and the AFM system will still eventually find a way to eat your camshaft. I have seen it happen on trucks with 8,000 miles. I have seen it happen on trucks with 140,000. The timeline changes, but the destination is the same. Now there is an aftermarket device that blocks this system, and it has been around for years. It is a small plug that connects to the OBD2 diagnostic port under the dashboard. It intercepts the communication between your sensors and the engine computer and tells the computer not to send the active fuel management AFM activation command. No reflash, no check engine light, no dealer detection. The brand name version is called the Range Technology Disabler and runs about $265. Generic versions on Amazon run $35 to $40. Here is where it gets interesting. A forum member on the Silverado Sierra forum disassembled a $40 generic unit a few years back and compared the circuit board to a genuine range unit side by side. The components, the layout, even the firmware matched. Somebody leaked the range design around 2021, and every clone since has been running the same hardware. You lose the warranty and customer support with the clone, but the internals are the same. I am not endorsing piracy. I am telling you what the teardown showed. Now let me not blow smoke here. A disabler is not a magic shield. If your Chevy V8 already has a damaged lifter or a cam lobe that has started to wear, plugging in a $40 device will not undo that damage. I know a guy with a 2015 Silverado who installed his disabler at 46,000 miles and still dropped a lifter 12,000 miles later because the cam was already grinding itself flat before the device ever reached his dashboard. I know another owner with a 2021 Silverado who bought his range before his first oil change, plugged it in at mile 0, and still had the engine fail at 9,000 miles because GM shipped that truck with defective lifters from the factory. A disabler prevents new damage from starting. It does not undo what already began, and it cannot cancel a factory defect. If this information is useful to you, hit subscribe. That is all I am going to ask. Now let me tell you a story that should scare you because it almost certainly applies to somebody watching this right now. A 2019 Corvette Grand Sport with AFM 5.3 V8. This owner had his disabler plugged in for 5 straight years, 41,000 miles with 0 problems. Then on a Saturday morning, he reads a forum post claiming you should occasionally unplug the disabler so the AFM solenoids can cycle and stay healthy. Sounds logical, right? He pulls it out, rolls down the driveway, and gets about 10 miles from his house. The AFM system activates for the first time in half a decade. What he heard next he described as the worst metal-on-metal sound of his life. He limped the Corvette home on failing cylinders. Cylinder 7 lifter, destroyed. $6,040 at the Chevy dealer counter because he unplugged a device for 10 miles. The lesson from that Corvette is not complicated. Lifters that have sat dormant for years do not wake up gracefully. It is like asking a muscle that has not moved in a decade to lift something heavy on a cold morning. Something tears. If the system is off, it stays off. But none of this is the part that actually makes me angry. This is. In January of 2025, federal safety regulators opened an investigation into the L876.2 V8 engine. 597,000 Chevy trucks were pulled back in, Tahoes, Suburbans, Silverados, Yukons, Escalades. But the recall was not for active fuel management lifter failure. It was for a completely separate defect involving metal shavings in the crankshaft oil passages from sloppy factory machining. That recall does not cover the lifter problem this video is about. If your truck was recalled and you got your oil changed to thicker 0W40, you are still rolling on the same failure-prone active fuel management lifters as before. And it gets worse. General Motors had closed 3 separate internal investigations into the L87 engine before federal regulators forced their hand. 3 investigations, all shut down internally. They had the data, they had the failure reports, they had engineers inside that building who knew exactly what was happening to these lifters. And somebody made the decision to close the file and keep selling trucks. I am not a lawyer, and I'm not going to speculate on what that means legally. But as a mechanic who has replaced these lifters in truck after truck after truck, I know what it means morally, and so do you. And as we sit here in April of 2026, GM is shipping brand new 2026 Silverado High Country trucks, Tahoes, and Denali Ultimate models with the exact same DFM cylinder deactivation system that is currently the subject of a consolidated class action lawsuit covering 877,000 vehicles. If you read a blog post claiming 2026 trucks had the system removed, that post was wrong. The 2026 trucks still have it. I have personally looked at the build sheets. DFM is still listed on every single V8 configuration GM offers. I had a customer last year who spent $76,000 on a brand new 2023 High Country with the 6.2 V8 under the hood. 14,000 miles later, the engine seized. His problem turned out to be the L87 bearing defect, not AFM. But his text message to me afterwards stuck with me. He said he paid $76,000 for a truck that could not make it to its second oil change. That is not a maintenance failure. That is a manufacturing failure that a corporation with billions of dollars in engineering budget chose not to prevent. Your highway fuel economy will drop about 1 to 1.5 miles per gallon without AFM running. Over the life of your truck, that is roughly $800 in extra fuel. Compared to an engine teardown costing from $3,000 to $9,000, the math is not close and it never was. Drop a comment telling me what year Chevy you are driving and what engine is under the hood. I read every single one, and I want to know how many of you are finding out about this for the first time from this video instead of from your dealer. If this made you angry, I have got another video you need to see. I tested a handful of cheap fuel system upgrades on Chevy V8 engines with real before and after results. And one of them that I was absolutely sure was a gimmick turned out to actually work. That video is linked right now. If you own one of these trucks, do not skip it.